Chairman Lewis and members of the committee.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I stand before you as the CEO of a nonprofit organization whose mission is to eliminate racism, empower women, and promote peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. This mission has no exceptions, and it has no borders. I am the daughter of an immigrant and a migrant worker where Spanish was my first language. My mother was an American citizen born in Oxnard, California, but moved to Mexico with her family in the 1930s as part of the Mexican repatriation program. The fear-mongering directed at immigrants at the onset of the Great Depression forced my mother into a country she had never known. Years later, my mother returned to the United States and married my father, who was a bracero, a copper miner, and later a real estate entrepreneur. My parents were proud American citizens of Mexican heritage. Through their story, they taught me to value education, hard work, and ethics. They also taught me to love my country. I am proud to say that my parents were immigrants. As much as my parents loved this country, they were not immune to discrimination. As a brown-skinned woman, I am familiar with the same discrimination. I have heard the stereotypical comments based on my race. Many times I have had people try to relabel me as Spanish, Greek, Mediterranean, as if being Mexican American somehow limited my intelligence or my ability. Although these acts would frustrate me, it never occurred to me once that in 2019, someone's skin color, immigrant story, or ethnicity could result in murder. On Saturday, August 3rd, all of that changed. A gunman motivated by hate and anti-immigrant sentiments drove 10 hours to a Walmart in El Paso to murder 22 individuals and injure dozens more because they were Mexican, because he saw them as invaders. His hate of Hispanics clearly outlined his goal: stop the invasion. The language of hate has historically caused acts of violence against innocent individuals. I wasn't alive when Emmett Till was murdered. I was a baby when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. My whole life, I have empathized with African Americans who have been enslaved, lynched, and murdered because of the color of their skin. My heart ached for the millions of Jews killed in Nazi Germany because of their faith. My husband is Native American, and I have been horrified at the acts of genocide faced by his people. Hateful and cruel treatment is not new. In many communities, people of color are treated disdainfully and met with cruel words. Although I was consciously aware of the effects of hate-filled rhetoric, I did not internalize these feelings until it turned into mass murder. Earlier this month, more than 200 El Pasoans came together to discuss the August 3rd attack and the rise of hate language in today's society. Present were the pastor of a church whose daughter was shot 3 times during the attack, the sister of a man killed while protecting his wife and granddaughter, the attending physician at University Medical Center who received the wounded. None of those mentioned were Hispanic. None of them were the expressed target of the shooter. Yet they were casualties of the hate that was meant for Mexican invaders. The pain, the suffering, the deaths were not restricted to one skin color. This was because hate does not discriminate. Hate cannot be controlled or contained. Hate is not a mental illness. Rather, hate is a direct manifestation of intolerance, ignorance, and fear that is fueled and disseminated through language. Hate dehumanizes and kills. If we allowed the continued rise of hateful language, no one will be safe. Today, I call on members of Congress to unequivocally denounce hate speech. This is not a Republican or a Democrat issue. The denunciation of hate is not political and it is not partisan. And so I say to those of you who remain neutral in the fight against hate and language, do not think you are safe. You may not be the target. You may not be the object of someone's hate, but you or someone you love may one day be the collateral damage. Thank you for the opportunity to submit this testimony. We look forward to working with you on these critical issues.
Thank you very much, Dr. Acosta, for your testimony. I have a question for Mr. Wolf, Mr. Binkley, and Dr. Acosta. Has shared your stories. Is there anything else you can tell us, or you want to tell us? You have an opportunity to do it now.
The recent tragedy in El Paso was just a few weeks ago, a month ago. So I will tell you that the pain and the anger that exists in our community is still very alive. I'm sure you could hear it in my testimony. When we gathered people together, and these were people of all faiths, we partnered with the Holocaust Museum, we partnered with the city of El Paso, and we've talked to the people in Sutherland Springs. We've met with many groups that have come from throughout the country that have also been the victims and have also been targets of the hate rhetoric directed specifically at their community. And right now, El Paso's still heartbroken, and we're also angry. We're angry because the language of hate it triggers people to move in directions that kill other human beings. And we look to you. You are our elected officials. We look to you to stand up against this. We look to you to find a solution to what's happening in our country. And we look to you to stand up for a higher cause, to look beyond your political beliefs and your political leanings, to think about why it was that you were elected to represent Americans, all Americans. And what we're asking you to do today is to remember that this is a responsibility that falls on your shoulders. You are our voice. You were elected for a reason. We look to you to enact and take those bold steps, and they may not be popular. It is not popular to do things that your constituents or others may disagree with, but it is right. And we must hold you to that higher standard. So as you look at the tax law and you look at the challenges, and I absolutely understand the gray that comes in with freedom of speech and hate speech. I understand that. But we must all be called to a higher standard, and we look to you to find those solutions, but to make them a reality. Like Mr. Wolf stated, the language is great, and talking about doing things is great. but it's time to do something. The FBI director, when speaking about what had happened a few months ago, said, oh, well, there'll be another one coming up. We all know that. There's not one person in this room. After El Paso, I thought, oh my gosh, when could it happen again? Then I fell asleep and woke up and it happened in Dayton. We all know there will be another tragedy. Is the next tragedy in your hometown? Is that where it needs to reach before we stand up? So we put this on you. And we look to you as our leaders to work this out and to make a change and stand up for the America that we all believe in. Thank you. Thank you so much. Absolutely, collateral damage. That is what we have come to call individuals that are murdered or killed while they were in somebody's way. They may not have been the target of that act of violence, but they happen to be in that space at that time. And we need to be very careful when we look at why we are choosing action or inaction. Because inaction, when you choose inaction at this point, what you're really doing is you're justifying an opportunity for an individual who may never have targeted your group to kill somebody that is from your district, from your community, from your church, because they happen to be somewhere at the wrong place, at the wrong time, and may not have had anything to do with the hate that that person had in their soul.